to know. Just let me know. Just take your time. Young nigga, my nigga, stay on your grind.
Welcome to Bella Networking TV on Monday morning, #Monday Motivation. Thank you so much if you're joining me. Today we are in Barking. We are here every Monday in Barking, and a big thank you to George. George is an accountant at Stallion Accountancy. And if you do want to get in touch, his website will be above and also in the bio. Today, I wanted to do a topic all around the hidden truth around self-assessment. Everybody knows that deadline, 31st of January. So I thought it would be a good idea to have George on the show to talk about what it is. So if you guys have any questions or any concerns, then do hit the comments below. If you're enjoying the show, please hit the thumbs up. If you're watching this through YouTube, then please subscribe. So George, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone, my name's George. I've known Bella now for about a year now.
Yes.
We actually met through networking, which proves that networking does work.
Absolutely.
And as Bella says, I've been here, my business is Stallion Accountancy, and every week, every Monday, we have the Bella Networking show, and I've always found it very, very enjoyable. So thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Actually, how long have you been in Barking for now?
Just over a year.
Oh, okay.
I moved up in September of last year, so it's getting on for about a year and a quarter now. But the actual business, Stallion Accountancy, has been going for about 5 years now.
Yeah, good. And what's your passion around accountancy? Why do you love it so much?
Funnily enough, I actually like the variety of talking to different business owners. People have the reputation that accountants are dull and boring, and we look at the numbers all the time, which is true.
No personality, exactly. And you're definitely not like that, George, that's for sure.
But by the same token, it's very important to go out and meet different clients and get to know how the business operates. So I like the personal side of the business, but also the networking as well.
Yeah, fantastic. And you're a really active networker, and that's fantastic. So I'd like to talk about the self-assessment, and let's talk about first the fines, okay? Now, what is the fine if you don't complete the online self-assessment by the 31st? What is the fine?
The initial fine is £100. So that £100 you'll find £100 if you don't file the return within 3 months of the deadline.
3 months of the deadline.
So basically, if you file the deadline, as you say, is the 31st of January. So if you file the return February, March, April, you will automatically get a £100 fine.
Automatically. So when it's late, even if it's the 1st of February, you might
be able to argue depending on what happens. But the revenue always say that you've had however long to do it, so you've had maybe from the 5th of April to the 31st of January to file your return. So if you can't do it within 9 months, then we're going to fine you.
So let's go back. So what was the date that the period starts and ends when you can file?
As you say, the deadline is the 31st of January. So that is for the tax year up until the 5th of April. So at the moment, with the deadline for the 31st of January 2019, we're actually doing the tax year up until the 5th of April 2018. So many people file their tax return online. So you've got to wait for the software company to bring out the new programs in order to file the return online. So in theory, you could file your return on the 6th of April, but in practice, many software companies require a month or two to actually bring out the new software. But you can file paper returns as well.
Sure.
So in theory, if you fill out a paper return and send it into the
Sure.
revenue, in theory you can file it from the 6th
So
of
are
April.
you saying then every year they introduce a new type of software?
Well, the return changes slightly every
Oh,
year
right.
because of different tax brackets and different rules and
I
regulations come out.
see.
So, for example, the different rates and regulations,
Got you.
so it's not exactly the same year
Because
on year.
things change and how they do
Absolutely,
it.
correct.
Okay. And just to understand this as well, so then the business period that would most businesses try to have their financial period, like the April to April, to give them that time period to
What the
file.
revenue actually do is because the tax year is up until the 5th of April, many companies, if you're self-employed or in a partnership, many businesses say we'll have our year end as the 31st of March because what the revenues say is if you have a business which has a year end of the 31st of March, we'll treat the 31st of March and the 5th of April as being like the same, even though it's 5 days physically different. The revenue treat the 31st of March and the 5th of April as being the same.
Okay.
So many businesses will have a period end of the 31st of March or in some cases the 5th of April.
Got
But
you.
that is the most common
Understood,
year end. Yeah.
understood. Okay, so let's talk about what is self-assessment. Firstly, from a limited company, so clients that you work with, what do you do for self-assessment and what do they have to do?
Limited companies aren't actually part of self-assessment.
Okay.
The only businesses, or self-assessment mainly relates to individuals.
Right, individuals.
So if you're a limited company,
Yes.
you've got to file company accounts.
Yes.
They go to Companies House,
Got you.
and that's outside the self-assessment
Right,
window,
so that's
if you
a
like.
separate
That's
filing.
correct.
Right, because self-assessment is to do with salaries.
Well, that's part of it. Basically, if you are an individual, the most common example is if you are self-employed, so if you've got your own sole trader business, or you might be in a partnership, well, they are the most common type of person that has to fill out a tax return. Now, you could be both employed, so you might be working for a limited company.
Your own limited company could be as well, yes.
And also you might be self-employed as well, because very often nowadays people have more than one source of income.
Oh, I see.
So you might be employed and you might have
so
your
you
own
could be running your own business. And you could also still be full-time employee, or you might work as
you might be
self-employment to get another revenue.
Absolutely.
So we're looking at self-assessment as an individual.
Correct.
So really, whatever income that comes in
As an individual.
As an individual. Okay. So if we look at then, if you are self-employed or freelancer, or you've got your salary from the limited company, what then do you have to do and make sure you do by the 5th?
Well, what you have to do is, if you are a completely new business, so if I was setting up a new business as of today, I would have to go to the revenue and tell them, because if I don't tell them and fill out a form, then they don't know that I'm in business.
Exists as a business.
What they will then do is they will give you what's called a unique tax reference number, or a UTR, and that is a 10-digit number which will identify you as an individual with the revenue.
Oh, I see. So then you present as a business.
So I say today I'm setting up ABC Accountancy. I write to the revenue or fill out an online form with the revenue. In about a couple of weeks, maybe they'll say, fine, no problem, your UTR number is, give you your UTR number, but I don't have to fill out a tax return until the 5th of April next year, because it always goes based on your income for a particular tax year.
Yes, that's
so obviously the 5th of April 2018, that's come and gone, that's gone already. So if I was setting up a new business today, January, I would have to fill out a tax return from today up until the 5th of April 2019, and then I would then have to file that with the revenue by the 31st of January 2020
as an individual. Understood. Guys, if you just tuned in, you are watching the Better Networking TV show, and we're here every Monday in Barking at the offices of Stallion Accountancy. Thank you, George. Today we're talking about the hidden truths of self-assessment, because the deadline is January the 31st, and we've just understood that the regulations consider you as an individual. Gosh. Okay, so brilliant. So George, then, as the business, you consider yourself as an individual, and then you fill in the paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
Do you do the same if you're self-employed or a freelancer?
Absolutely,
right.
Because really speaking, a freelancer, very often they are self-employed as well.
Yes.
It depends on the business structure.
Right.
Because if you're a freelancer,
right.
you might be a one-person company,
yes.
but you might be a limited company,
right.
in which case you'd kind of be outside the scope.
Sure.
Or you might be self-employed, in which case you'd be inside the scope. So it depends how you've set up your business as a freelance
understood.
business.
So I always hear that there's a lot of scarcity around the form
Mm-hmm.
to fill in. What does that form look like? Is it an intensive form to fill in? Online, how easy is it to fill in?
It very much depends, because there's an 8-page form which
right.
is standard, and everybody has to fill that 8-page form out. You might not have to fill every page out, it might not all be relevant to you, but that's basic things like name, address, national
right.
insurance number, etc. So everyone's got to fill out those 8 pages. The other parts of the form, it depends on individual circumstances. So for example, you might be self-employed, or you might not be self-employed. So if you're self-employed, you have to fill out
status of you
because on, I think it's page 2 of the form,
mm-hmm.
you go through and you've got to tick what sources of income you have. So if you tick yes, I've got self-employment income, then that means you've got to fill out the self-employment section of the form. You might sell a property or something, in which case you might be taxed on the sale of the property.
Right.
So if you tick that part of the form, then that part of the form you have to fill in. So it could be a very short form, or it could be a very long form, depending on each person's individual circumstances.
And as an accountant, what's your role, and how do you go about helping them fill in the form? What's your role there?
My role is basically, I have a regulatory point of view, so you tell me what the income is, I go through and fill out the form. However, I think it's better to be proactive, because now you'll know, give or take, roughly how your business is performing. So what I try to do is, before the 5th of April, I try to meet clients, and then you can then say, it's all about planning for the future. Because let's say now, let's say I was doing your tax return, for example, up until the 5th of April, we can't go back to March and say, well, you know what, Bella, if you've done this and you've done that, we'd have saved a bit of tax, because we can't go back to March and change what has happened. So what my main role is, apart from actually doing the returns, is to try and help clients before the deadline passes. So
plan in advance.
Bit of planning. So if we meet up, say, if we had met up in, say, February of this year, we could have said, oh, Bella, if you do this and you do that, then that means this will happen and that will happen, and then you're actually doing something within the tax year, so you can save money then, rather than doing what you do now, and so it's too late now, we can't go back and do something.
To be proactive early on. Absolutely. Guys, if you just tuned in, you are watching the Better Networking TV show, and I'm joined by George Gare, who is from Stallion Accountancy, and today we're talking about the hidden truths of self-assessment. If you have any questions or comments or queries, please hit the comments box and all your questions will be answered. If you're enjoying the show, please do hit the likes, and if you're watching it through YouTube, then please subscribe. We're going to talk about the questions of if you've made profit or if you haven't made profit, because that might be a concern with some of the viewers. So George, what is the scenario where a business or self-employed, you haven't had a great year and you haven't made profit, so then maybe you weren't able to pay yourself that year, or you could be a brand new business and it takes time to make a salary. The first question is, do you still have to fill in a self-assessment form?
Yes, absolutely.
Right, and why would you have to do that if you haven't made any profit?
Even if you haven't made a profit, you still have to fill out a return. The reason being, again, it depends on people's individual circumstances.
Right.
So if we take an example, let's imagine you are a new business. So at the moment you're still employed, but you set up a new business to try and make it grow, but you haven't given up your full-time employment as well. So in that particular case, you still receive a salary from your limited company. So let's say you get £30,000 worth of salary, and from that you might have, say, £3,000 of PAYE tax deducted. If you set up a new business and that makes a loss of, say, £2,000, what you can do, you can offset that £2,000 of loss against your employment income. So you've got £30,000 of employment income, £2,000 loss from your business, your self-employment business. So now overall, your net income would be the 30 minus the 2, which is 28,000. But your employer has made you pay tax on 30,000. So effectively, you have overpaid your tax. So in that particular case, you fill out the tax return, then that will allow you to get a refund of some of the tax back from the revenue again. If you're not employed and you're just self-employed and that is your only income that you have, if you make a loss, one of the options that you can do with that loss is carry that loss forward until such times in the future as the company or the business does start to make a profit. So when you do begin to make a profit in the future, you can, if you fill out a tax return in year one and say you've made
no
a loss,
profit, no salary.
Let's say you've made a loss of £3,000.
Yes.
In year two, if you make a profit of, say, £12,000, you can bring that loss forward and offset your £3,000 loss from year one against that profit in year two. So you effectively in year two, you'll only be paying tax on £9,000.
Gotcha.
But if you don't fill out a tax return in year one, the revenue don't know that you've got that loss and you won't be able to carry it forward. Absolutely.
I understand. Brilliant. I'd like to just ask you if you can share one tip or two tips with the viewers that they can do, or any concerns before the 31st of January, if there's any tips you can
Well,
give
very
to
often that example that we've just given is actually very, very good.
Right.
Because many new businesses, when they begin, the business owner is still earning some type of employment income, and they don't know that if the business makes a loss in year one, their self-employment business, they don't know that they can offset that loss against the employment income. So I talk to them and they go, "Oh, can I get some tax back? Oh, I didn't know that." So very often, your accountant, a lot of people say that accountants are very expensive, etc. But I've come across so many cases where your accountant, if you go to them, because they know the laws and what you can claim and what you can't claim, very often they will actually be able to save you money.
Absolutely, that's fantastic. Guys, if you do have any other questions regarding self-assessment, or you'd like to get some more tips, then I would really encourage you to get in touch with George. His details and email address is on the bio, and I'll also add it up above, so do reach out to George. George, before we end the show, there's always a segment called Just Ask Bella, hashtag Just Ask Bella. So do you have a networking question to ask me?
Yes, indeed I do. When I began networking, I spoke to other accountants that I knew, and very often I'd say to them, "Oh, do you go to networking?" "Oh, I don't go networking, it's rubbish." I'm like, "Okay, well, what's the problem?" and they say, well, I went to a networking meeting, or I went to 2 networking meetings, didn't pick up any clients from them, you know, it's a waste of time, doesn't
Yes,
work,
I hear that a
etc.
lot.
So my question to you would be, if you're a new business, how would you plan in order to actually get the benefit of networking?
That's a really, really great question. And I believe anything in business, you have to plan. So if we look at an accountant's role, which is for them to get clients to help with bookkeeping, accountancy, or self-assessment, anything to do with the financial management of the business, I think one of the things that accountants should do, or any other business, is try to put themselves as an expert. So before you leave home, try to think about 1 or 2 great clients that you've helped. So we've actually been talking about self-assessments. You could talk about a client that you helped to save money in self-assessment. So I also say that you should also create like 2 other goals as well. So the first goal is obviously try to show yourself as an expert. The second is, what type of businesses do you want to meet that night? So if you be a bit more specific and targeted, you're going to get better results. So think in your mind, okay, I'm an accountant. Do I today want to meet new businesses? Or maybe I want to meet established businesses that have been going for 2 or 3 years. And if they are established businesses, then think about the questions you want to ask. What challenges have you been having with your accountancy? Have you been hitting the net profits that you want to, or gross profits? Are you spending a lot of expenditure? So it's all about planning and thinking about the questions in advance.
Right.
Because the more assertive you are in networking, you're going to find the right delegates that need your help. And then your networking results are going to become a bit more positive and a bit more achievable as well. So you definitely have to plan the questions and show yourself as an expert. Yeah.
So it's all in the planning rather you just turn up and then talk
absolutely.
to everybody.
Don't get me wrong as well. You can attend networking events, and I would always say maybe the 3rd goal is to have fun, because then it becomes natural, and maybe, you know, serendipity, you don't know who you're going to meet, but still try and have those 2 goals, because you need a direction and focus, because you'll just get lost in the networking event with no guidance.
So based on that, I think some events I've been to, they actually give you an attendance list beforehand. So based on what you're saying, you can go down the attendance list. I want to talk to that person, that person. Then that on the night, it's more focused rather than just randomly walking
Absolutely. And I think that's where a lot of business owners fall down, that the networking is too random. And if it's too random, then you're collecting random business cards that have no value. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, that's very useful.
And thank you for all the tips on self-assessment. So guys, we hope that you've enjoyed the show today.